Welcome to a self-published author's diary. I am Elodie Novodatsky. I write about first times, second chances, things that scare the crap out of me, and things that make me laugh out loud. I'll be speaking with you and sharing my adventures in self-publishing, the behind the scenes of writing, and the business side of it. And before we get started today, a small message from our sponsor, Anchor. Thanks for listening. Hello, this is the first time that I'm using the phone to record, so I'm quite excited about this. And the Anchor app is actually pretty cool for that. Like I can add a flag whenever I have something that I might edit. And yeah, so anyways. Today, I will be talking about the behind the scenes of launching a podcast. And I'm talking about this because as you're going through, and if you're listening to this, you're already listening to my podcast. I have not yet launched it officially. It's a very soft launch right now. But I wanted to share with you the steps I've taken. I just recorded my Friday episode and it seems I'm losing my voice a little. Again, I just wanted to share a little bit of behind the scenes with you. And so here we go. As you know, my podcast is called The Self-Published Author's Diary. I have a trailer, which I'm going to share with you right now. You may have already listened to it before deciding to listen to this podcast, but here is my trailer. Have you ever thought about self-publishing, or are you interested in a glimpse into the not always so glittering world of writing? I am Elodie Novodatsky and I have been self-publishing since 2014. Join me in my self-publishing adventures with a self-published author's diary. Every week I'll discuss the ups and downs and everything in between of my writing life. I'll share what has worked for me, what hasn't, what some of my inspiration is, and more. I'll interview, fancy word for chatting, writers at different stages of their writing adventures. Ready, set, write or read or listen to a self-published author's diary. Why did I decide to launch my podcast? I went into the reasons a little bit in a previous episode, I think in the second episode. Several reasons, I may have mentioned some again before. I was inspired by Elle Penelope and her podcast, My Imaginary Friends, which I really enjoy listening to. Being behind a mic and yet connecting with people. It's giving me an outlet in a way because yes, I'm an introvert, but connecting with people is still very important to me. 3, hopefully be helpful to others and interesting and entertaining. 4, talk about writing with other writers and have more people discover them and their books. 5, yes, also have more people discover my books. 6, keep track of my progress. 7, my husband, who I am interviewing, actually already interviewed, but will publish on that episode on Friday. He encouraged me to do it. So while I had been toying with the idea, it's great to feel the support. Some of my goals are linked to the reasons why I decided to launch a podcast, provide helpful information, keep track of my writing and all. When it comes to my podcast stats, I'd like to have 50 followers in the 2 weeks after my official launch and at least 5 reviews on Apple Podcast. And then grow as I release more episodes. If you'd like to already help me with that, well, you can go onto your podcast platform, wherever you're listening to this episode from. And you can click on follow or subscribe, and then you can also leave a review on the show on Apple Podcasts. It really does help. I also set up the podcast to be able to have monthly supporters, but I don't have a goal with that in mind, at least not yet. I am sharing the link on the linked blog post, and also I think it's, depending on where you're listening to this podcast from, there is also like a little support button. You can then give 99 cents, $4.99 or $9.99 per month and stop at any time, of course. I am not planning a Patreon at this stage, just because between podcasting and writing and my part-time audiobook narration jobs, which granted, they're not regular, but they still happen here and there. And my research part-time freelance gig, which again is very irregular, but is still something that I sometimes need to do. And then, trying to keep the house in a certain order. I don't think I could give enough of my time to truly give content to a Patreon group right now. I'd really like to see readers discover new authors, and that's what I'm hoping also to achieve a little bit with my Friday chats with writers. And again, to have writers feel like they're having coffee with me by listening to this podcast. Coffee or orange juice or tea or whatever you're drinking. What podcast platform do I use? I use Anchor.fm. They also have an app, which I'm currently recording from. They distribute the podcast for me, and I use their podcast creation platform. So far, it has been pretty cool. They have those transitions and background music and everything. The questions I'm wrestling with: how often should I publish episodes? Consistency, I think, is key. I know exactly when the podcasts I listen to release episodes, and I look forward to the episodes dropping, even though I don't necessarily listen to the episodes on the day that they release. But I know when they release. When should I publish the episodes? I've been reading a lot about this. There are quite a few articles explaining when you should publish episodes. There was an article on Podbean blog, Medium, and so many more. And they all seem to agree that the best days are between Mondays and Wednesdays. However, I also read one, which I think was on Anchor, actually on the Anchor blog, but I can't seem to find it again. But I will link to it when I find it. That mentioned that the best days were Mondays and Fridays. I asked a question on my Instagram on Sunday. I'm sharing the audio from that video. Good morning. It's not morning, it's after 12. I am working on my podcast calendar. And I'm wondering, so I will do Friday. My podcast is going to be great. I'm going to do Fridays chats with authors, writers. Emails will be on their way at the beginning of this week for the authors, writers who told me they were interested. But I also have regular episodes. And I'm thinking, Mondays or Tuesdays to release those. Articles are all over the place when it comes to the best days to release. What do you think? And there is no consensus. I talked to the chemical engineer about it. My husband, not just a random chemical engineer who nicknamed himself the chemical engineer. And he mentioned something about how if a listener really enjoys your podcast, they will listen whether you publish on Monday or on Friday. Which is true. I know when my favorite podcasts have their new episodes, but I will listen to them at different dates. Some of the podcasts I currently love: True Crime Obsessed, My Imaginary Friends with El Penelope, Noble Blood, The Murder Squad, My Favorite Murder. Some people might just listen to the top one of their list. By the way, when it comes to those podcasts I've just mentioned, you might notice a theme. Yes, I am a true crime fan. Not of the crime, of the documentary. I think that to keep track of the week, Mondays might be better, but to give me more time, Tuesdays might work best. So I've decided that my episodes will be published on Tuesdays and Fridays. On Fridays, I will publish the chats I have with authors and my author and my husband, which is the first interview I have with my husband. And on Tuesdays, the diary of my adventures, the things I'm learning, the things I'm trying, the things I'm writing, my weekly goals. Yes, I am an author. I do use the word thing a lot when I'm not writing. I think it's an author thing too. I mean, I'm sure it's not only an author thing, but the amount of memes that I've seen talking about like how you can wax poetry or write, those sentences that are full of life. And then when you're talking to somebody, it's like, hey, can you open the thing so I can put the thing in it with the thing on top? And that thing, that thing that opens. Like that's sometimes how I am too. Like I remember one time we were driving in Texas actually, and I was talking to my now husband, I was kind of like, look at these things, the things that opens, that opens the thing. He's like, the gate. I'm like, yes, the gate. Thank you. So all my episodes will be published early mornings, East Coast time, because that makes sense to me. So while my audience might be worldwide, I'm crossing my fingers it will be, I am guessing a lot of my audience will come from North America. If my audience ends up being mainly in Australia, well, I might readjust the timing. But otherwise, I'm guessing, it's good to have the podcast episode ready in case people want to listen to it while they're having breakfast or drinking their coffee or tea or getting ready. And then on Friday, it's the same thing. Also very early in the morning in case people want to listen to it when they're getting ready. And on Fridays, technically, there might be two audiences also listening, my own regular audience and the one of the writer I'm talking to. And by releasing that episode on Friday, it can also give an episode for the weekends as well. Maybe it's because I listen to podcasts on the weekend too when I'm cleaning or getting ready. So that's why I'm going with that schedule right now. Launch plan. What is my launch plan? Not my lunch plan, my launch plan. I'm currently doing a soft launch. I've let some of my closest friends and my family know. I asked for feedback and incorporated said feedback. I've added one link on my blog. I've added a little button on the side of my blog, on the sidebar, and I've added a link to the podcast in my previous self-published author's diary articles. To make the logo of the podcast, I used Canva. It is based on the logo I had created for my blog articles for a self-published author's diary. The logo for each episode also comes from Canva. It's easily changeable so that I can edit it for each episode based on the logo of the podcast. A trailer for the podcast, which I've already shared with you. A list of writers and authors who are interested in chatting with me. I'm so grateful that some authors I was going to cold query in a way already mentioned they wanted to learn more about my 5 Questions Friday feature. I already have several episodes that are published, which not only helps me to ensure that everything is going smoothly in terms of production and feedback, but it also helps to ensure the podcast is available on all main streaming platforms before launching. I have an official email in addition to my regular author email, which is a selfpublishedauthor'sdiary@gmail.com. I have purchased the domain a selfpublishedauthordiary.com, and it is linked to my website. And I also have, on the header menu on my website, I have the podcast link, and I'm linking to it to the anchor.fm podcast page, which, to be fair, because I wanted to create the own page, which I haven't done yet. Like, I want to create a podcast page, which is still in the making. But that anchor.fm podcast page has all the links to the streaming platforms. It has the trailer, it has like the description of the podcast and all the episodes. So it's pretty cool to have that up there. Now for the official launch. I will launch it. Right now, the plan is to launch it on Friday. It might still change. I might switch it to Tuesday, like next Tuesday, depending. So today is April 12th. I will either launch it officially on April 16th or I will launch it on April 20th. I haven't decided yet. And it will kind of depend on how I'm doing with contacting the authors that I'm going to do the chats with and kind of seeing where this is going in terms of timeline. And I will email my author list announcing I have a podcast and then emailing them again on the day of the official launch. I will also email my self-published authors mailing list. They already got a little preview on Friday. I have been thinking about doing a giveaway, but I'm holding off on that because I'm not quite sure yet what to offer for my giveaway. I will announce it on all social medias, including maybe doing one like $2 per day ad on Facebook for about 5 days. So I will spend maybe $10 in advertising the podcast at the very beginning. And I will be sharing the audio as widely as I can. So if you'd like more ideas about launching your own podcast, I've read a few articles that you might find useful. Some of them were talking about giveaways. Some of them were talking about doing cross promotion with other podcasts. Some others were about like creating a social media presence, like with the name of your podcast. There are quite a few things that you can do. A lot of them do say that you could try to build your mailing list before, but I know, like, I'm still building my mailing list as an author. And so I'm trying to get more people on my mailing list because I think I've mentioned in the past that, the mailing list is one way to talk directly to your readers or listeners. So that's one thing that I'm trying to be better at in terms of being more strategic about it. But yeah, so that's what I've was reading and some things that the one thing I'm not going to be doing right now is adding like more social media handle with the podcast name, just because I am focusing on my own social media and I'm already not doing a whole lot of that. So I'm not going to go into that particular marketing part of launching a podcast. And then I think it's important to just keep on adding content. I mean, like with a book release, the official launch date doesn't mean that once it's launched, I never talk about it. Like when you're releasing a book, yes, you have the entire momentum, building up to the launch of your book, but you know that to keep the sales coming, you have to keep the momentum after the book launch. You have to keep the readers, maybe with teasers, maybe with trying to cross promote, maybe by writing the next book, of course. But it's not your book. Promotion and marketing doesn't end with the book being released. So that's kind of, I think, the same with a podcast. So I will be adding content to all my social media frequently in the sense of, sharing snippet of the podcast. And of course, I will continue to share with my blog and I will continue to share what I'm learning. And I'm very excited to share all those chats with the writers I will be talking to. I really can't wait. And otherwise, when it comes to what I'm planning for my week in terms of writing, well, I am still revising my Untitled project, my adult rom-com. And I am still in my mind working on, really in my mind, because I haven't drafted anything yet. I have, I think, one half of a scene that was stuck in my mind when it comes to Miss Me, Miss Me Not, which is going to be the next book in the Gavert City series about Nadia and Gabe, the male main character's name, Gabriel, Gabe. So their story is slowly brewing in my mind, and it's still brewing. But I did write half a scene I think it was even a couple of months ago, where I had, like, I could see and hear Nadia having an argument with Erin. And if you read Fear Me, Fear Me Not, you know who Erin is. She was the main character in Fear Me, Fear Me Not. And I was having them really like a movie playing in my mind, having them arguing with one another because Nadia finally, it's not like she lashed out, but it's just that she's been having so much to deal with everything that happened to her and everything. And so it was just one moment where she kind of like had a breakdown and just started expressing all the anger and sadness that she has been keeping inside her. And so that was kind of the catalyst for her to leave Gavert City and go to Maryland. I wonder where I got that that little tidbit from. So to go to Maryland to spend some time with her grandmother. So this is what I'm currently, that's still brewing in the back of my mind. It's like I'm not plotting it, but I'm seeing more and more of what's going to happen, and I'm developing the characters in my mind while I'm finishing to write or revise my Untitled project. So that are the main writing goals this week, is finish this revision. It's been my goal. I need to make a plan for the next couple of days. I'm also working part-time this week on narrating an audiobook. So I need to make sure that I'm keeping the time in my day to write and record. And quick reminder, if you want to support this podcast, the best thing to do is to subscribe or follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or choose your favorite streaming platform to do so. You can also rate my podcast on Apple Podcasts, and you can sign up for the monthly support. The link is on this episode's description. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you very soon. Happy writing if you're a writer, and happy reading to everyone. And yes, reading includes listening to audiobooks. Bye!